Application. Alright, so
I
what
am
now?
not going to have this conversation again. You are no longer allowed to talk for the rest of this period.
What?
You are no longer allowed to talk for the rest of this period.
What?
Your unending, eternal complaining is getting you nowhere, except for maybe in worse seats. It was hard to make this seating chart because more than half of you are a behavior problem. So I advise keeping your mouth shut before I make it worse.
I don't even have it.
Yes, copy it, please.
Where is it?
Copy the title, write down the date, today's the 24th, and write down you have a quiz on Friday.
Is that my pencil? That's my pencil actually. That's my pencil. Wait. Oh. What? Hold on.
Okay, I hear whispering, and whispering is talking, and you are not allowed to talk. Jacob, where are you going? Here, Jacob, use my pencil.
Sure, I'll use it. Get out of the way. Oh. Get out of the way. There.
Dom, sit in your chair correctly.
Keyboard, just flip this way, and there we go.
After we are done taking notes, I am going to be walking around to give you credit for taking the notes immediately after we're finished. All right, so stop. This is not like we're in serious quiet mode. Like I don't want you to say God bless you to someone who sneezes. All right, we're quiet. As far as any other sound goes, you don't hear it. Nobody else is in this room besides you and me, as far as you're concerned. We are talking about the basics of C#, which is the computer programming language that we are going to be using in the program Unity, which is a video game development software that is completely free to use. It is completely free, like you could, on your computer at home, if it's good enough to run it, download it and have the entire program for free. There's nothing that's locked, and it is very robust. There's so much that is involved in this program that is possible. You could literally program like Fortnite, Call of Duty, Minecraft, any of those games could be programmed on this program. There are games that have made millions of dollars that have used this program. All right, you do not have to pay for this program unless you make over $10,000 selling a game that you made using it. All right, and that's just they have lawyers that like look for games that if you make a certain amount of money, then you'll be getting a call if you don't pay them. Basically, that's what it is. So we're using a program just like Photoshop and Adobe Premiere Pro that is a professional program that is used at the highest levels of the industry for video games, but unlike those programs, this one is free. So if you start to catch on with it and you start to think like, oh, I would like to make a little game, and you can send it to the App Store. You can have your friends download it on their phones. You can download this for free at home. All right, and learn and use the stuff that we're going to be going through. So the language, there are 10 words in 3 slides. The programming language that we are using, again, is C#. A programming language is a set of rules and vocabulary used to communicate with the computer and tell it what to do. It is called a language because it is literally you using symbols, letters, and numbers to talk to a computer. It understands these languages. Computers basically speak math. That's what it comes down to. They speak math. And we've developed these languages to communicate what we want into math. It translates it for us. All right. If this text-based language C# is very, very, very similar, almost identical to JavaScript, which is the language that is used in Khan Academy and those activities that I've been giving you, which is why I've been giving you those activities. The programming language in Khan Academy is almost the same as the one that we're going to be using in Unity. In fact, a lot of these key terms you should be familiar with based on doing the activities. The languages that we use with robotics and that you've used with like Scratch and Code.org, those block type languages are basically, if C# is English, then those block type languages are like sign language. They're visual, but they're limited in how much they communicate. So we have to learn how to use a text-based language. Another one is curly braces. You guys should be familiar with using the curly brackets. You can see up there, they're used to open and close commands in certain programming languages. A good way to think about it is that when you give commands to the computer, you're basically giving it boxes with instructions inside. And when you tell it to do something, that computer will run between the boxes, getting the information from the different places that you tell it to get the information from. And those boxes are created by these curly brackets. You close information and compartmentalize it, separating it off from other code by putting it into these curly brackets so that it can access them in the box. All right? And then you have variables, which store information. You can name a variable anything that you want to name it. You guys did this with the hi, my name is, and with the fish and the snowman. All right? You create a variable, you call it whatever you want, and then you can make that variable equal to any kind of information you want to save in that variable, whether that's a number, whether that's a mathematical formula, whether that is a string of text. That variable can then be referenced later on in place of typing that same information a second time, a third time, a fourth time. So, for example, relevant to the gaming that we're going to be looking at, in a game like Subway Surfer, where the character is moving straight, and over time they just get faster and faster and faster, right? And the trains that are coming at you start to get faster too. The speed will be controlled by a variable that's probably just called speed. And as you're programming the game and you're testing out different kinds of speed, and you find like different areas of the code that need to reference the character's speed, like the train speed is based on the character's speed, and you need to do that. When you want to put all these numbers in, you want to just use one variable for speed every time, because then if you have to change the speed all of a sudden, instead of having to go through everywhere you used it and change it, you just edit the one value that is in the variable, and it automatically updates everywhere else you used it. And so the point of a variable is to make things easier for you, to save you time, and also to stop the code from getting too cluttered and too messy. Because the messier the code gets, the harder it is to avoid mistakes, and the harder it is to find mistakes once you make them. These are our next three words.
Ew, it wasn't finished. can't do it. You're too quick in order to do it. See, you got a note right here. Please, welcome to notes. Which makes it much easier for me, and then I could just write it down over there. Alright.
A string is a sequence of letters, numbers, or symbols. When you were doing in Khan Academy the programming, and you had when you were drawing the circles for the snowman, and you did ellipse, and then you did in parentheses the X position number, comma Y position, comma length, comma width. That is an example of a string. Alright, the X, Y, length, width values are strung together with commas in a sequence, and that is what we call a string. A text string is like that, but it's in the quotation marks and it turns green. Like you guys remember when you would say, "Hi, my name is," in the quotation marks, or when you're doing my favorite foods and you were listing the foods in quotation marks. Those text strings, the computer knows to look at those as images to show instead of trying to interpret it as code. So instead of giving you an error because "Hi, my name is Mr. Rhino" isn't a code, it just will show that on the screen of whatever device you're looking at it on.
Oh.
Then you have functions. Functions are kind of like variables. In fact, a lot of times you'll make a function as a variable. You'll make a variable as a function. But functions store an entire sequence of code. So to go back to that box analogy that I was talking about, where the computer's going to all the different boxes to get information. When you use a function, what you can do is later on you can point to the same box over and over again without having to copy all the information that's inside. An easy way for me to talk about this that I've been saying today is in kindergarten and first grade, you were taught in your math time how to add and how to subtract.
Oh God, I keep getting so
Jacob, please stop making so much noise.
What do you mean? I've got some.
Jacob, go in the hallway.
No.
No, go in the hallway because you just punched this brand new keyboard.
I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it.
Calm down. Copy your notes, please.
I'm sorry.
So in kindergarten, when you're learning first and second grade math, you learn how to add. In kindergarten, when you're learning first and second grade math. In kindergarten, first and second grade, when you're learning math, and you're learning how to add, and you're learning how to subtract. That's like, just imagine that as learning these functions for adding and subtracting. And that way, when you get to math in Miss Glenn's class in 7th grade, Miss Glenn's class in 7th grade, when she needs you to add something, she doesn't have to sit there and reteach you how to add. So the first step in this algebra equation, what we're going to do is, if Johnny has 5 apples and Sally has 3, and you put them together, how many is that? She doesn't have to do that every time she asks you to add. Instead, she just says, add those numbers, and you understand that, calls the add function in your brain. You remember how to add things, and you just do it. That's what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what functions do. And again, that way you don't have to copy and paste the same code over and over again, saving you space and saving you time. In a video game, you might have a function called level up, where you store the code, so every time the character levels up, maybe they get to new items in the shop, maybe they do more damage with different kinds of weapons, maybe they're faster, maybe they have more health, maybe they, whatever it is. And instead of putting the level up function that adds all the different stats and stuff every single time, they'll just call level up, parentheses, semicolon, every time it's necessary, instead of having to write it out every time. Alright? Again, the more space you can save, the less likely you are to make mistakes. and the more clutter that you have, the harder it will be to fix the mistakes once you make them, because you won't be able to find them in all that clutter. And then we have debugging, which just, and again, I'm giving you these terms. You guys know we always have to do this one boring notes day before every unit. I'm giving you these terms because I have to, when I'm writing directions for you, or when I'm helping you do things, these are words I'm going to use, and you need to know what they mean.
Bye, Keegan. See you later, Keegan. 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 Keegan.
So debugging, if I tell you to debug, or if instructions tell you to debug, all it means is to look at the code, try and find mistakes that you've made, and then fix them. All right. And the word bugs, by the way, that comes from back in the Mark II, which is one of the earliest computers ever made. There was an error that the computer scientist was trying to figure out how to fix it. It wasn't working. The computer wasn't working. He couldn't figure it out for a while. And once he did figure it out, it was that there was a bunch of moths living in one of the towers. And so literally he had to remove actual bugs from the computer to get the computer to work. So that's why it's called debugging still. And that's why we still, with video games that mess up a lot, we still call them buggy. So that's where that comes from. Last slide.
Oh my God.
Oh.
You're such a bully. It's not a lot, but you still gotta do it.
Looping is self-explanatory, right?
No.
It's when you make a command loop, all right? That means you get the command to turn on multiple times. You could have it go on for infinity, which will almost always cause an error, or you can have it go on according to set conditions. So 2 examples, one related to gaming and one related to something that more of you will probably understand. The first one is just like if you have a game with a spawn point for enemies, and the enemies might spawn over and over again eternally until you go to this spawn point and destroy it, or until your character dies. All right, and those would be the conditions where it's saying spawn enemy on the loop until the spawn point no longer exists, or until the character no longer exists. But another example of a loop in computer programming would be the buffering loop. All right, when you look at a YouTube video or an app that's not loading, and you get that circle, that's animation that plays with the circle spinning around, right? Everyone hates seeing a buffering loop, but that loop will go on forever, or until the program or the video or the app turns on and finishes loading. And so that is set to a loop that is attached to whether or not the program is ready to go, the video is loaded, and it's just programmed on a loop to continue showing that animation to you until those conditions are met.
Elijah banging on the desk.
Okay, thank you, I saw.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, we're gonna make it to trouble. We'll be like, ooh.
And then there's an array. An array is just basically a list. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but basically it's a list. It stores a list of values or numbers or names or words. And you guys interact with arrays when you use, like in a video game, when you use the main menu or the save menu or the multiplayer lobby menu, or if you're using playing a game where you have dialogue choices, usually those choices will be stored in arrays. If you're picking up like loot or gold or items from destroying a box or a crate, or usually those things will be generated randomly from an array. Also, settings on your phone, if you're looking at that, those things usually are stored in arrays. So That's basically just lists of stuff that you can access. We will be probably using arrays to keep track of like the high score for the game that you're playing, right? When you make your game and you get to the point where they're able to get scores, we'll probably keep track of the most recent highest five scores and have that array display as a high score list at the end of the game after your character dies. Yep, we're gonna make games. That's what we're doing.
Nice. Because I always wanted to find out how to do it.
We'll talk more about it tomorrow.
Dark dissonant, no. Forget.
It'll be a lot more straightforward than the robotics because it'll be like the instruction sheets like you had in Photoshop, where you just have to follow it step by step instead of trying to figure it out on your own. We still are talking, even though I'm not mad anymore. We just need to, be consistent. So calling, you might hear me say, you didn't call that function correctly, you forgot to call the function, you forgot to call the variable, you need to call the variable, whatever. All that calling is in computer programming is just, you're accessing something specific, a variable or function or value, whatever, by calling its name. You don't call its name literally, you type it in, but when you type it in the correct way, then you summon that box to you so that the code can happen. When you guys did the moles in the holes or whatever, and you had to call draw mole, or you had to call your name functions to have it say, hi, my name is, over the screen everywhere. Those are examples of calling functions. All right, and then the last one, which is, again, the most important thing. I don't know why we're playing with our computers over there. I think we're just going to be not using them for the rest of the class.
I'm just typing the
keeping your code clean and organized maximizes your chances of doing a good job. All right, the more you could technically make a code that is functioning perfectly fine by typing it like a paragraph, just line after line after line after line. But if you mess up, the second you mess up, and you're looking back at this giant paragraph with no spacing between lines, full of symbols and numbers and parentheses and colons and semicolons and curly brackets, then it's going to be way harder for you to figure out where you messed up than it will be if you have it spaced out, nice and organized, nice and neat. It's like if you were to take notes for social studies just by writing it from left of the copybook to the right of the copybook, left of the copybook, just filling every line instead of doing like 1 bullet point, 2 bullet point. And that's what you need to organize your code, because otherwise you have just these, and then you go back to study, or you go back to look at the code and figure it out, and you're like, oh, I just have 5 full pages of nonsense. I can't even figure out where one sentence starts and the next sentence ends. So make sure your code is clean. Are we all done copying?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
This is where I gave all my other classes today some free time. You will wait for 3 minutes in silence before you get your free time. Every time I hear someone talk, we'll restart it, and if we just wait here until the end of class, that's fine with me. That's a new 3 minutes. Don't put your notes away, because I'll be coming around and giving you credit. No, you did it on purpose.
No, it was an accident. It did an accident.
Stop lying to me. Sit down.
It was an accident. What do you mean?
Just sit down.
I hate this.
Just click it. Is Hayden the only one out today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Shemaya, what?
Alright, I'm coming around to check your notes. No videos, no guns.
Hey.
I'm just going Roblox. There's no point. What is wrong?
Wait, what's the password? It says it's wrong.
You're basically saying you can't play Arsenal.
We can't play Arsenal.
If you go into your applications,
Can I just click?
then you can
Do I have to oh yeah.
then you can find Google Chrome and get Safari if you want.
Whoa, the frick? Holy frick. What the frick?
By the way, there is GarageBand on these.
Oh yeah!
We'll be able to use it to make like music tracks for our
You don't know what a garage band is?
GarageBand is the music creator. You just like stick your mix and
Yeah.
so we can actually make music for. Okay.
Nice. Pretty nice, eh? The time. Wait, we can do whatever you want? That means we can play Roblox, yeah. Hey!
Gianna, you can take a picture.
Google.
Gianna.
You.
Gianna. Go on it, and I'll run.
Sorry.
We're doing it.
Who? Frankie. Yeah. What the? Oh, nice. Okay. Okay. Oh god. Nice. How do you stop? Stop.